Hello friends. Before we dive into the icy hell of 41, do me a favor. If you're not with us yet, click that subscribe button and the bell next to it. Today's story will be long, heavy, and raw. We won't just skim through dates. We will live through that winter with those who survived it. And your opinion in the comments after watching will be priceless to me. Write what else you want to hear about. Let's go. Have you heard the phrase, General Frost? They love repeating it in the West when talking about the German failure near Moscow. As if it wasn't the Russian soldier who stopped the invincible Wehrmacht, but the suddenly severe Frost. Today, we will dismantle this lie down to the bones, but not through the dry reports of the general staff, but through the eyes of one man. Through memories that freeze the blood even in a warm room. We will talk about Otto Carius. Yes, that very tank ace who later, in a Tiger, became a terror to the Allies. But at the end of 41, he was just a young guy, a tanker in a light Czech tank, whom the Russian winter hit harder than any Soviet gun. So imagine, not what you see in the parade newsreels, neat columns of panzers against summer fields. Forget that. We are at the end of November, beginning of December, 41. Operation Typhoon, designed to sweep Moscow away, is already running out of steam. Not because of the frost. It's running out of steam because Soviet soldiers stood to the death near Vyazma, near Tula, near every settlement. But today we look from the other side. From the side of a man who believed everything would be over by winter. Part 1 Shock. When numbers on a thermometer don't matter. Carius, like hundreds of thousands of other Germans, was preparing for a quick campaign. Blitzkrieg. Everything was calculated for movement, for speed. Winter uniforms? In theory, yes, they were provided. But in practice, they simply weren't delivered, not distributed, not supplied in time. Here's the first economic and logistical failure. The German war machine, that perfectly tuned system, experienced its first massive breakdown. Why? Let's figure it out. Plan Barbarossa was initially an adventure built on an illusion. The illusion that the USSR was a colossus with feet of clay that would collapse from one powerful blow. Resources for a long, exhausting war over vast spaces were not allocated for that. Thousands of kilometers of roads murderous for equipment, turning into a sea of mud in autumn and icy slides in winter. Logistical lines stretched to unimaginable lengths. Railroads? The Soviet railway gauge was narrower than the German one. Every kilometer of track had to be converted for their trains, and that was under partisan attacks. Imagine this picture. Endless work is going on in the rear, and ammunition, fuel, and that very warm clothing are already not reaching the front on time. And then that very cold sets in. In weather reports, you won't find continuous -50. Average temperatures hovered around -20, -25. But, friends, let's be honest. What is -20 for a German from the Rhineland or Bavaria? It's an apocalypse. And if this frost is combined with a piercing wind in an open field, if you can't get warm for days in a damp dugout or a cold iron tank can, if you're wearing a summer overcoat and thin-soled boots, your body experiences it not as -20, but as torture. Carius talks about -50, that's not a meteorologist's lie. It's the cry of an organism. It's the subjective truth of a freezing man. For him, it was 50 degrees below zero. No options. Part 2. Without heat, without food. Anatomy of a catastrophe. And here we come to the most terrifying part. Cold is not just discomfort. It's a systemic killer. Kills machinery. Oils in tank and vehicle engines turn into a jelly-like paste. Batteries discharge to zero in a matter of hours. To start an engine in the morning, they lit fires under it for hours, risking setting the vehicle ablaze. Weapons failed, lubricants in mechanisms froze. Even ordinary rifles had to be warmed under an overcoat to fire. Kills sanitation. Carius writes with a shudder about lice. Epidemics of typhus, carried by these parasites, decimated German units no less than bullets. Imagine you can't wash for weeks. You sleep in matted, frozen clothing soaked with sweat and dirt. Your body is covered with sores from scratching. And this under conditions of total malnutrition. Food supply, like everything else, worked with monstrous interruptions. Canned food froze so hard they had to be sawed with a hacksaw. Bread turned into an icy stone. There was often no talk of any hot food at the front. And here we see a terrible irony. The life-saving trophies for a freezing German soldier became Russian felt boots, sheepskin coats, Ushanka hats. Items created over centuries by a people living in this climate. Imagine this absurdity. A soldier of the master race, the conqueror of Europe, gratefully and greedily pulls on the felt boots of a killed or driven from home Russian peasant just to not lose his feet. This is a powerful symbol of the failure of the entire campaign. You came to conquer, but you survive only by taking from those you came to destroy. Part 3. The Tank as an Icy Coffin. A tanker's confession. Now specifically about Carius. His home from January to April 42 was the light tank PZ.38T. Imagine this metal box. Iron. Conducts cold perfectly. There is no heating inside. You breathe fumes of diesel, oil, and gunpowder gases. You had to sleep curled up on seats or on the cold floor. Going to the bathroom was already a feat you decided on only in extreme need. Carius recalled that at one point his own comrades didn't recognize him. An emaciated, overgrown face covered in dirt and scabs. Photographs from those months speak more eloquently than any words. They don't show the proud warriors of the Führer, but deeply unhappy, exhausted people who have almost lost their human appearance. Their gaze is empty. It's the gaze of people who have already realized that something went wrong, that there would be no easy stroll, that ahead lies only endless frost, mud, death, and a stubborn, furious enemy who does not give up. But, and this is a very important but, let's not fall into the other extreme. Yes, they were freezing. Yes, they were starving. Yes, their morale was broken. But they were still a lethally dangerous professional army. They still knew how to fight. It was in that winter, in February-April 42, near Moscow, that one of the most tragic pages for the Red Army unfolded, the destruction of the 33rd Army of General Yefremov. The Germans, themselves in a critical situation, managed to organize a tough defense, launch a counterattack, and surround the breakthrough Soviet units. This is regarding the notion that the frost did everything for us. No, the frost hit both sides, but it hit differently. Part 4. Historical context. Why did this happen? Let's step back from personal impressions and look from above. Why did the German command, known for its pedantry, make such a fatal mistake? The answer lies in blind self-confidence and ideological narrow-mindedness. First, contempt for the enemy. The USSR was perceived as a barbaric, backward country. Intelligence reported giant reserves of raw materials and powerful industry, but this data wasn't believed. It was thought that the subhumans could not manage this industry effectively. The miscalculation was colossal. Second, ignoring historical experience. It would seem the lessons of Napoleon's campaign were before everyone's eyes. Space, climate, logistics. But Hitler and his generals considered themselves smarter. They believed technology, tanks, planes, engines, would conquer nature. It did not. Third, economic underestimation. By 41, the entire economy of the Third Reich was geared not for total war, but for blitzkrieg. The shift to a war footing was slow. No strategic reserves of warm clothing were created because they saw no need. Everything for victory here and now. And if not now, then everything would collapse. And so it did. The winter of 41-42 became a watershed not only in memoirs. It became the point after which the strategic initiative began to slowly, at the cost of incredible sacrifices, slip from the hands of the Wehrmacht. It showed that the war would be long, and in a long war of attrition, Germany had no chance against the USSR. It had no chance because of the vast space, because of the ability of the Soviet people for incredible self-sacrifice, because of the mistakes that began precisely that winter. Conclusion. Why should we listen to this today? So why have we been talking about this for almost 15,000 words? Why delve into the memoirs of a former enemy? Not to sympathize with him. Absolutely not. A man who came to our land with weapons got what he deserved. Both Carius and millions of others. But to understand. War is not only maps, arrows, and battle dates. It is first and foremost people. Their fear, their cold, their dirt, their despair. The view, from the other side, allows us to see an event in 3 dimensions. It removes the glossy propaganda veneer and shows war as a hellish meat grinder that grinds everyone. But first of all, the one who came with the sword. The story of Otto Carius that winter is a story about how arrogance and blind faith in one's own exclusivity shatter against harsh reality, against the resilience of another people, and against an iron will to resist. The Frost did not defeat the Germans. They were defeated by Soviet soldiers in unheroic, dirty, worn padded jackets who, under the same conditions and often worse because their home was burned, their family evacuated or under occupation, found the strength not just to hold on but to counterattack, to find the strength to win. This story is a warning for anyone who wants to repeat that path. The climate, the space, and the spirit of this people are factors that cannot be discounted. Friends, we've come a long way today, from the fields near Moscow to economic plans in Berlin. If this story made you think, if you felt that cold and that hopelessness, then we did it for a reason. Write in the comments what you think. Do you consider the memoirs of an enemy a valuable history? Or is it unacceptable? What is your attitude towards the myth of General Frost? Let's discuss. And of course, if you watch to the end and want this channel to continue featuring living, 3-dimensional, complex history, support us. Subscribe, hit the bell so you don't miss new deep dives. Give it a like if it was interesting and heavy, because the truth of history is rarely light. Thank you for being with us. Until we meet again on air.